You're listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. We're honoured today to have Mossy, better known as Phil Moss, currently President of Football Coaches Australia. And in his spare time, I'm gonna need to bend over and read this out, Mossy. He's Head of Coaching and Distinctive Leadership at National Australia Bank. And we're going to come back to that because I'm very keen to understand all that. And Moss is also an analyst on Big Sport Breakfast and Fox Sports occasionally. Phil's had he's a Sydney boy, Northern Beaches boy, and played most of his football there as a junior and as a senior with Manly Warringah. Before he went on to represent Australia at 2 Maccabea games, one with that tragedy in 97, and I wouldn't mind visiting that with you, Phil, as well. Had success as a player coach at DY, and then moved into his role where I think everyone knows those 3 fantastic years he spent with Arnie at Central Coast Mariners, winning a championship and a premiership and a couple of grand finals, then taking over and having almost 2 years as head coach of the Mariners, and then came back into the A-League for another year with Arnie at Sydney FC, won another championship there, I think, Mossy, and also had the great pleasure of working with Arnie with the 2008 Olyroos for that Olympics. So I'm sure watching them play at this Olympics has been great. All-round good guy, and someone that was at the very, very beginning of Football Coaches Australia. Long introduction. Welcome, Phil Moss.
Thank you very much, Gary Cole. I feel a little bit out of place given who you've had in this seat before me, but absolutely honoured to be here and be part of this great work that you're doing. Thanks,
mate. Appreciate that. Phil, before we talk about your coaching journey per se, I really want to look at Football Coaches Australia because while this podcast is sponsored by Football Coaches Australia and most of the people we talk to are members, we haven't really talked about the organisation. And I know that you were there at the inaugural meeting in Sydney with when I'm sure Glenn Worry cajoled you to be involved because that's the sort of person he is. But you've been there from day one. You're the current president. What is it? Why is Football Coaches Australia important?
Look, there's so many reasons, Gaz. But if I could boil it down into one main driver for me, was wrapping a collective arm around coaches that just hasn't been there in the past. There's so many different elements to what we do, and why I think FCA is so important to coaches. But ultimately, coaches spend time together getting their qualifications, but that's about the only time you feel part of something as a coach. The rest of the job is quite a lonely place, even though you're doing it for a club and you've got a staff around you. It can be a very, very lonely place as a coach. So to have an organisation that wraps that collective arm around you and is there to support you through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad. It's not just about when you're going through a tough time at a club and potentially losing your job. It's the whole journey. You go and get your qualifications and then it's kind of like getting your driver's license in a lot of ways. You kind of get it and then you're on your own. And I just think it's really important to have that support network around you for the whole journey, to ride the highs and the lows, and because there is no such thing as anything in between. It's either high or it's low. I'm just very, very passionate about what the organisation stands for, how it's been set up. The people that we've got involved are just absolutely first class from the moment we had that first meeting to today, and it's certainly going to ensure that no coach who chooses to accept the support of an organisation like this will ever be on their own again in Australian football.
No, I love that. I think a wise man once said, for a coach that's just been sacked, they've got their family and they've got their lawyer, and that's about the end of it. But nowadays, obviously, we've got Football Coaches Australia to add to that, which is such an important thing. And on that note, I guess I've been a part of the organisation now. I'm in year 2, and when I arrived, the relationship with the national body was a little bit rocky, and I think part of that, well, no, not part of it, probably most of that sat around the fact that one of the first things Football Coaches Australia did was go into bat for Alan Stajic, who obviously lost his job in a bizarre set of circumstances as coach of the Matildas. So how important is it for an organisation that represents people like coaches to also have good working relationships with the national body as well as member feds?
Look, I'm very much of a collaborative mindset, Gaz. I think, ultimately it takes administrators, players, coaches, and fans, and the media to put a game of football, at the top level, at the professional level, on the field. If we work through down to the grassroots, you're talking, volunteers, parents, players, coaches, and I don't see why it should be any different off the field. To make the game as strong as it can be. So having strong relationships, a collaborative approach, obviously individuals in positions of power have to make final decisions. But I think to arrive at those decisions, if we can work together as a game, with the game at the very heart, and particularly the players, because they are the game, if they're at the very heart of all the decisions that we're making, and we're being collaborative in our approach to reaching those decisions, then I think we're going to be in a much, much better position as a game. I think we've spent too much time in the past cannibalising ourselves as a game, working against each other, which for me just doesn't sit easily. And I don't think we can ever reach our full potential as a code in this country until we genuinely work together in the best interest of the game.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. During COVID, and when you say that, it's almost like it's over, but obviously you're in lockdown in Sydney and we're just out here, albeit I think Victorians are sticking their toe outside the door at the moment because we're very wary of going back in again. The work that Football Coaches Australia did during the whole, last season and the beginning of this season, you must have been really proud of that.
Exceptionally proud, Gaz, and I remember sitting down with the likes of yourself and Glenn Worry, our CEO, and look, the work Glenn has done is just superhuman. Not just now what he's done, but the way he, along with James Kitching, set FCA up from the beginning is just phenomenal. But that's a much longer conversation for another day. But I remember sitting down and saying, well, I'm always glass half full. Always have been. I'll find a silver lining in any dark cloud. And I remember saying we cannot waste a great crisis. And this is a great crisis, and I don't mean great as in let's celebrate it, but a great as in volume and the span of it around the world. So how do we make the most of this? And we have some fantastic people in the right places in the organisation with the right skill sets to take everything online. And I think we really galvanised the coaching fraternity. We had some wonderful, which you were part of, Gaz, obviously, meetings with the A-League coaches, the W-League coaches, the national team coaches, men's and women. We had, for the first time, mass amounts of coaches on a Zoom meeting with the top brass from FFA. And I just think that really broke down a lot of barriers that have been there in the past, because there's been a lot of decisions made in the past that don't involve coaches who care for the whole game, because it's in our best interests to care about the game and how we can get the best out of players. And I just thought it was a really powerful use of our first lockdown back in 2020, and it's continued on.
Yeah. I think, Phil, it's fair to say that when FCA was set up, so much of what went on, probably in part because of the focus around Stage and the work that was done there. But it was very focused on professional coaches. And I think, from my perspective, what happened during lockdown was that the importance of what we can do for community coaches, for members, and obviously there's an awful lot more coaches out there in the community that are not currently members, and we'd like them to do that. But the work shifted, or the importance of the work that we're doing for both professional coaches and community coaches shifted significantly. Do you think that's a fair observation?
Absolutely, and it was a very conscious decision to do that. We had to start somewhere, and we're running off the smell of an oily rag in a lot of ways, which the PFA did in the very early days as well, and now look at them as an organisation. But certainly, I'm a big believer in never forget your roots and never forget your past, what set the foundations of the game. And that is the amateur levels, the grassroots levels of the game, the volunteers, the mums and the dads, the multicultural communities that have created a lot of these clubs over many, many years. And that has my full respect. And we have to, never forget history and what's helped get the game to where it is today. Of course, there's still a long way to go, but I think we've got to embrace the past to really, take the future by the horns and get the game to where it rightfully should be. But there's no, that's the thing. There's no God-given right as to where the game should sit in this country. We've got to work damn hard to make the most of what we've got. And our biggest strength is our participation numbers and the strength of numbers within the game in Australia. How do we leverage that to get the game where it should be?
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. So if you could sum up what the short-term future of Football Coaches Australia looks like, how would you sort of summarise that?
Well, I'd love to get us to a point where we are driving enough revenue through the organisation that we can actually make some appointments in management positions and those key positions that allow experts in their field to really give coaches around the clock support that they need. We've got a lot of wonderful people involved and real expertise and deep football knowledge and passion for the game and for coaches in particular. But ultimately, the bigger the organisation becomes, the more resources we need, so we can stretch and have the strength that we need across so many different areas to support coaches and provide that ongoing professional development. My short-term motivation definitely is to drive some revenue through the organisation so we can make some appointments. And there's a lot of people putting a lot of hours in for absolutely zero remuneration. And it's not about remuneration, but everyone's got to earn a living. So I'd like to get to that point in the very near future.
And I think on that as well, when the organisation has got some decent funding behind it, one of the key things that we believe we can do is actually get out with coaches on football pitches around the country and coach the coaches, lead the leaders, because that's the part for me that has been misplaced over the journey. We've put thousands of coaches through licenses and courses in the last 10, 12 years, but the ongoing development of coaches has gone by the by. And I think, we owe coaches, the game owes coaches an opportunity to grow and learn and get better as well. And, we've done that in so many ways already, but let's hope there's a lot more of that to come as well.
Yeah, you're right, Gaz. And at the very core of Football Coaches Australia is coaches on a pitch coaching players to be the best they can be and provide that environment to get the best out of themselves and help guide them and teach them as coaches do. And we haven't had a lot of that since, over the last 18 months, as we were just talking about. Most of what we've done has been on a virtual football field on Zoom meetings. But it's laid a good platform for when we do get past this pandemic and things do return to normal. We got a bit of a taste of it, over the last few months before this latest lockdown here in New South Wales and Victoria. But it just gave us a taste of what's to come once we get past the pandemic. But being out on the pitch is where we all want to be. And I think, some of the workshops that we ran where we invited coaches, both grassroots and semi-professional and professional, to attend some of the national team coaching sessions was absolutely fantastic. You know,
Yeah.
all the spots were filled to capacity in absolutely no time. So you can see the power of it.
Yeah. No. All powers to us. It's great work, and thanks for being the main man, Phil. We appreciate your leadership. Speaking leadership, do you think there's a difference between leadership and coaching? Are they one and the same? Are coaches leaders? Are leaders coaches? Sorry, are good leaders coaches? Are good coaches good leaders?
I think the best of the best have a great balance between the two, but I do see a difference between the two, and I think it's, you know, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but in my mind, I like to distinguish between the two. I think coaching is more about teaching. You know, you look at the technical and the tactical side, whereas leadership, you know, I believe is much more around the management and the mindset, the motivation side of things. And you know, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but you know, it's really become even more apparent to me moving into the corporate world away from the football field. You know, the difference between coaching and leadership. And I'm not saying one is more important than the other, but I do think there is a clear distinction between the two.
Yeah. Look, it sort of fast forwards in your journey a bit, but you went from assistant coach with Arnie at Mariners, head coach at Mariners by yourself, back assistant with Arnie with the Socceroos and at Sydney FC. Very, very successful through that period, and got the opportunity to take on a senior leadership role in the corporate world. Doesn't happen for all coaches, but I think it's very smart of NAB to make that sort of let's call it a transfer or an acquisition to be able to bring you in. Talk to me about how that came about and how you were feeling at the time about making that move from coaching land into the full-time corporate world.
The opportunity came about through an old friend of mine, Paul Jurgens, who's a local coach in the Manly Ringer Premier League with Wakehurst, and we've known each other a long time. He was the general manager of retail at NAB, so he ran the retail distribution business for NAB, which is a multi-billion-dollar business. And so we think very similar around leadership and getting the best out of people, and you know, the inverted triangle that leadership is about your people, it's not about you. And he asked me to come in when I was at Sydney FC and just do a couple of leadership talks to his team of executive leaders, and a lot of what I said resonated with them. And one thing led to another. A conversation started with his boss was up from Melbourne for one of the talks, and he was a you know, mad rugby union fan, and a lot of what I said resonated with him. And yeah, the conversation led to an opportunity to come across to NAB. And at the time, I was very, very happy at Sydney FC. I was, you know, it was a time when Arnie was just leaving to go to the Socceroos. Stevie Corica was taking over. I've known Stevie for 20 odd years, 25 years. And we've always been good mates and had very similar philosophies on the game and how it should be played, and our man management. So I was really looking forward to just slipping, you know, from assisting Arnie to assisting Stevie, and then this offer came up, and it was a massive decision. Probably not as big as I realised it was actually going to be. 3 years down the track, it was a bigger decision than what I realised. I went into 2 sales leadership roles at NAB for the first 2 years, and had zero banking experience, zero corporate experience, zero business experience, and all of a sudden was in charge of 15 NAB branches on the North Shore of Sydney. You know, trying to get the best out of branch managers and home lending executives, and yeah, it was a. I look back now and I you know, I pinch myself, and sometimes I got to slap myself to wake myself up. But yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
So, given your lack of experience across those 3 areas, what did you lean on to support yourself through those early times?
Well, I think, you know, whether you're on a football field with studs, you know, on, or you're in a big tall building with a different type of suit on. It's not a track suit; it's a suit with no tie these days. You're still working with people, and you're still trying to get the best out of yourself and get the best out of the people around you. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Whether it's football, whether it's being a father, whether it's being a corporate leader, or a corporate leadership coach, getting the best out of myself and those around me is really what gets me to throw the doona off in the morning and jump in the shower. So, I remember the first day, getting in the elevator of a NAB building at Chatswood, pressing the 13th floor, and as the doors opened, it must have been some form of anxiety attack, because all of a sudden the elevator started closing in on me, and I remember breaking into a little bit of a sweat, thinking, what have I done? 3 days ago I was on the football field at Macquarie University in a Sydney FC tracksuit, doing what I absolutely love, with some of the best players in the country. And now I'm walking into a room full of 15 branch managers at National Australia Bank as their boss. And I just had to check myself and stay in the moment and just go, I remember saying clearly to myself, people first. And it was just a way of checking myself. And I learned some valuable lessons in coaching, particularly one night, actually my last game in charge of the Central Coast Mariners, just about staying in the moment, checking yourself and making sure that, you keep things simple when the pressure's on and you're in a difficult situation. So it was a great learning experience back then that came back and helped me out on day one at NAB.
Yeah. All power to you, and all power to the NAB for recognising the depth, knowledge and quality of your leadership. I have to admit, there's times that I just sit and wonder how many missed opportunities there are. My old mate Ernie Merrick sitting around Melbourne, desperate to coach again. But I keep thinking, if the corporate world got hold of Ernie, his wisdom and knowledge in the field of coaching and leadership as a consultant or in a full-time role would be extraordinary, because my general belief is that if you've been a successful coach, then you can certainly make that switch without, the industry knowledge and background.
Yeah, look, and I agree totally. And Ernie, how Ernie's not involved in the game, and whether it's a corporate world or football, what one of my frustrations, Gaz, is over many years seeing so many good football people who are passionate about the game. They don't have to have played at the top level, but they're passionate about the game. They love the game. They've got great savvy around getting the best out of people, and they understand leadership, or they understand coaching, they understand people. Why the game doesn't embrace more of those people and put them in key positions, I'll never understand it. And maybe one day down the track I'll be in a position in the game where I've got the capacity to bring some really good people into the game. And I know there are good people involved in football. Absolutely, but I think there's a lot on the periphery that, if brought into the game, would definitely add strength to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the things that AFL does down here in Victoria at all levels of the game, particularly coaches, they just don't let good people walk away. Head office creates a role for them until clubland opens up an opportunity for them. They'd be very good, and I'm assuming that the rugby league up there is a bit the same.
Yeah, well, we absolutely, and we have a strategy at NAB around make sure you've got your enterprise lens on when it comes to people, and what that means is, there will often be people in the wrong roles the role might not fit the person, but if the person fits the enterprise or the organisation, you don't let good people walk out the door. You find a role that suits them, and I think there's a lesson in that for sport as well.
Absolutely. Good people, really good, very good people are not that easy to find. They don't just fall out of trees, do they? All right, enough of this corporate jingle. How did you get started in coaching, Mel, mate?
Well, interesting story. I was playing at Manly United under an old friend of ours, John Cosmina, and I just got back from a year over traveling Europe and playing a bit of football in England, and got this phone call out of the blue from a guy I didn't even know at a local club called DY Swans in the local Manly Warringah Premier League, and he introduced himself and just said, "Look, have you ever thought about coaching? We're looking for a coach for our Premier League side." I said, "No, don't be silly." And he said, "Look, do me a favour, just come down one night and just meet the club president and have a look around." And my dad had actually played for DY years and years earlier. And in fact, the clubhouse there is named after an old mate of his, Dave Anderson. And so I went down one night, and somehow within about 67 minutes, I was signing a contract to coach them for that season. And we went on, and it's a local Premier League. I had a ball. The club did everything that they could to be as professional as possible for a local Premier League club, and we went on and won the grand final in my first season, and had a ball doing it with some players that other clubs didn't want. And I got the bug straight away, and it wasn't so much winning the grand final in the first year, because probably the strongest I've ever felt about coaching was when I had to take over from Ian Crook at Northern Spirit in the youth team the week that we made the grand final, because he was appointed to the senior job at Newcastle United in the NSL, and he left the club. He had to leave the club immediately, Northern Spirit. He left on the Tuesday. We were in the grand final on the Saturday against Marconi, and we got belted 5-0. And and that was the day that, ouch, absolutely. And I was still playing for Northern Spirit at the time, so I was sort of a first-team player and helping out the coaching with the youth team. But I walked away from that game and thought, this is what I want to do. And all my friends and family thought I was absolutely stark raving mad, because I'd just been beaten 5-0 in a grand final. But yeah, that's been a bit of a trend too, Gaz, I have to say, through my career, is the tough moments are the ones that I've really latched onto and held dear to me.
Yeah, that I spoke recently about resilience. Well, on this podcast, we asked coaches all the time about the importance of resilience. So we're already discussing it. So we'll jump ahead and mention it here. But everyone says it's just so important. The challenge is talking about how you help players and yourself do that. And I think on a personal level, I think it's a bit like a muscle. I think each time you get a kick up the backside or a punch in the head, you get to choose whether you get up, dust it off, and regroup and move forward again. Do you think that's right, or how do you help develop resilience in both players and maybe people that should be selling more loans?
Well, I don't think you can develop resilience unless you go through tough times yourself. Resilience for me is built through experience. There's a little bit of, installed in you from your parents, of course, and your upbringing. There's no doubt about that. But that all ties in, those experiences and the tougher experiences that you go through. And, to be a successful coach, they say all successful coaches, when their team walks out on the field, you can see a little bit of the coach in the team and the way the team plays. If you haven't got resilience as one of your key pillars, then your team's not going to be resilient, which means they're not going to be able to handle the tough times in the heat of battle. So I think resilience is absolutely key. And, it probably comes from my parents and my upbringing, that they've always said, embrace the tough times, because that's when you learn about yourself. And, never truer words were spoken. Yeah.
While we're in that place talking about tough times, you represented Australia at the Maccabea Games in '97, and the Australian team some were about to walk on the bridge, some were on the bridge when that tragedy happened. I think your brother Jonathan, who's a state level cricketer as well, actually was in the water at the time. That I don't want you to relive that, but how did you deal with that? How did you cope with that mentally once Jonathan was safe? And
yeah, well, it's funny. I'll just go back a step to when it first happened. I won't relive the whole thing, Gaz, but when it first happened, it was I was about 150 metres behind the bridge with Ian Gray, ex-Socceroo Ian Gray, who was our coach at the time. the late great Ian Gray, and all you heard was this crackling. And first thing I heard was, after the crackling, was someone yell out gunfire. So we all hit the deck thinking that, because there was a bit of unrest in Israel at the time, and so straight away our thoughts were, machine gun fire, and there's trouble up ahead. And then someone yelled out, the bridge has gone down. And now I knew my brother was ahead of us with the cricket team, and so I just instinctively got up and ran as quick as I could towards the bridge, met by a war zone. There was people everywhere screaming, crying, a lot of bodies in the water. You could see that the bridge had sort of collapsed on itself. And I just knew John was in there. And I just remember this guard, army guard, standing across my line with a machine gun, across his chest. And the guy was probably, I don't know, 6'4". I'm 5'10" when I'm on tippy toes. And he was built like the proverbial. And I just remember grabbing him by the machine gun and just throwing him aside. And I don't know where the strength came from. Obviously adrenaline and out of body experience, I guess. And then I just kept running, half expecting to be shot in the back, but looking for my brother. And and I saw him scrambling up the riverbank, and thankfully he was okay. But obviously we lost 4 members of the Australian team in what was a real tragedy. And I remember going back to the team base, and we had a team meeting with the whole Australian team, and the leaders at the time really impressed me, because they got in front of the group, and they faced into what we were dealing with on the night. No decisions were made on whether we'd play on or whether we'd get on planes and head back to Australia until the next morning from memory. But I was just so impressed with the leadership in a crisis situation, and I took so many learnings from it. Whereas we've seen plenty of examples, even over the last 18 months with this pandemic of leadership failings. But this was a really, really powerful experience. I won't say it was a great experience because there were lives lost, but a really powerful experience and learning curve to go through.
Yeah, wow. And on a personal level, you went back 4 years later. Was any of that lingering on when you went back to Israel 4 years later?
Yeah, I've just got the goosebumps now, just as you said that. I had a very, very strong desire to go back and face into some demons that were there, and just wear the Australian shirt again in Israel. In honour of those that we lost. We did play on in those games when we had those fatalities, but it was kind of surreal. It was a blur, on that trip, and I just wanted to go back there and really experience it with a clear head, and honour those fallen comrades, and it was a great experience, and I knew that that's what the Maccabea Games was supposed to be about. Tragedy befell us on the first experience, but the second one was fantastic, and it's just great to go back there and face into it again, and I think that's part of the journey of leadership as well, is not steering clear of your uncomfortable behaviours, but actually facing into them.
And developing that resilience muscle along the way,
100%.
Okay, let's get back to football. As a player or a coach, which coach or coaches has had the most influence on you?
Oh, so many. I wasn't born to be a player, Gaz. I had to work very, very hard as a player to sign a professional contract, and I'm very proud to say I did it at the ripe old age of 27, with Northern Spirit, and it was a very proud moment for me, because I knew what I'd been through to get there. I knew that I wasn't born, to be a player at the very top level. I had to work every step of the way to get to where I got to, and so to be able to say I had a professional career, scored a goal that probably gave me the springboard into coaching. It was the only goal I scored, so I can't forget it. But it was one of those moments where so much went into scoring a goal, and I was a defender most of the time, so I didn't get and a shortish defender, so I didn't go up for set pieces very often either. But it was just that culmination of a lifelong journey of hard work to get to that moment where everything went right in the moment, to score a goal and think, I belong. I belong at this level, and it gave me the belief to go on then and become a coach. And there, I always say there's no such thing as an overnight success. I remember someone, saying it at the time, you've scored a goal, you're an overnight success. No, the goal was just the icing on the cake of a lot of hard work and belief and knockbacks. So, some of the coaches that really helped get me there, all my junior coaches that gave me the encouragement, but also there was some coaches that gave me the kick up the backside when I needed it. And I was one of those that sort of, every time someone said you can't, it sort of motivated me to do better. Cozzy was a pain in my backside when I was playing under him at Manly. I was his punching bag in the dressing room many times. But he was one of the first coaches I rang when I signed for Northern Spirit to thank, because I just knew that some of the lessons he gave me, and he was an old school coach back in the Manly days. They were the things that got me running through a brick wall to get to that next level. Des Martin was another one. He was a wonderful coach, gave me a lot of confidence. He would never beat me up in the dressing room. He'd always give me the confidence, put his arm around me and back me to go to the next level. So that there are a couple that spring to mind. And then obviously Arnie had a massive influence on me when he signed me at Northern Spirit and really brought that European professionalism that him and Robbie Slater and Ian Crook had. They brought that to Northern Spirit, and that was a real eye-opener as well.
Yeah, that must have been an interesting time. You mentioned the three amigos at Northern Spirit. Wonderful professional careers in Europe, the three of them. To bring that experience back into Northern Spirit for a 27-year-old new professional must have been there must have been some great things and some great learnings happen at that time.
Yeah, there really were. Robbie Slater's first, and we're great mates, obviously now. But and the friendship was formed on this very day. It was his first session with the club. I'll never forget it. It was a rainy day. We were down at a local public park at the bottom of North Sydney, looking out towards Luna Park. And anyway, we were playing. It was a small-sided game from memory. I think one team was attacking the big goal, and the defending team was attacking two mini goals that were made out of, solid metal, with those metal nets attached to them. And the ball broke, and Robbie was going for it, and I was going for it, and I came up with this ball and all challenge. The problem was, because it was a wet day, we both slid, and Robbie slid straight into the upright of the mini goal and split his shin open, and everyone, the world stopped, and everyone thought, oh no, Robbie Slater, our marquee signing's broken his leg. Mossy's up for it, and Robbie, in his typical style, has gone, don't you know who I am? What do you think you're doing? Blah, blah, blah. and I went back at him, and then Arnie, I'll never forget Arnie's voice cutting the tension, saying, Mossy, my office after this session. I thought, oh, well, there goes my career. The competition hadn't even started yet, and I was just a state league player trying to make it as a professional. But anyway, got to the office, and Arnie said, look, I had to haul you up to the office, but great tackle. I want to see more of that during the season. And it was a good lesson in man management too, because it was like, I had to show his star player that, he had his back. But behind the scenes, he certainly gave me the confidence to keep playing the way that I played.
Yeah. Look, he's done he obviously, Northern Spirit, I'm sure he's a very, very different coach today than he was at Northern Spirit. Refined his craft with amazing success at the Mariners, and then headed off to Japan and then back to Sydney FC. Fell into the Socceroos job the first time, maybe a little bit early. But he just continues to do a great job. And I know he'll be bitterly disappointed because the Olyroos have just bowed out in Tokyo. But tell us a bit about Arnie, the man and the coach.
Yeah, look, he's very, very misunderstood publicly. You know, there's a lot of people in Australia that, you know, would not be Arnie fans. But I can tell you, anyone who's played for him, anyone who's coached with and under him, anyone who's been mentored by him, anyone who is a mate of his, you can't speak more highly of who he is and what he stands for. You know, he cares too passionately about the whole of the game. In fact, that's probably cost him a bit of success, really, in his own right as a coach, because, you know, we went into COVID lockdown and he did a performance gap report for the whole of the game to work out where the lost generation had gone and why and how we could get them back. He didn't have to do that as a Socceroo coach. He didn't have to take on the Olyroos job, you know, for no extra income to try and develop, you know, the next generation of Socceroos. So, you know, he's been a huge part of my journey as a player and coach and good friend. You know, the thing that we all probably ask more than anything is would a mate take a bullet for you? And 155% he would. In no matter what it's about, whether it's in our personal lives and our professional lives. But yeah, I would like to see him get the success. You know, he's got it at club level. I'd love to see him get the success he deserves, you know, with the national teams and then one day abroad, because I think he's got it. I think it's great that Ange is paving the path for all Aussie coaches to follow. And I'm a massive fan of Ange's, you know, Muskie's, Popper, Arnie, you know, you name them. I've just had a lot more to do with Arnie over the years.
Yeah, no, there's some terrific ones. Joe Montemuro just being appointed to Juventus Women, as well as there's Tanya Oxley. There's some amazing Australian coaches plying their trade overseas, doing great work.
Michael Volkanis, we can't forget Michael Volkanis as well with the Greek national team.
Yeah, no, that's another conversation we need to have. That's one of the beauties about this podcast is there's no shortage of great people and coaches from the Australian game to talk to. So, no, it's good.
I don't know. I don't know. You got a great one today, mate.
Well, I think what's great about it, Phil, is that what I've learned in having these conversations is there are some people had, like John Aloisi, have had this illustrious playing career. And essentially coaching for them, they roll from the elite playing career directly into coaching. And getting those early jobs isn't too much of a challenge, it seems, because of what they did as a professional player. Then there's I'm going to call them the career coach, like Joe Montemuro, like Alan Stajic, that didn't necessarily have the outstanding elite playing career and have been journeyman coaches. They've had to build and grow their craft and get sacked plenty of times and come back and think about it and add to their craft and their skill. So, you know, for me, I think anyone that's been in and around the game for as long as you have and been around the experience that you have, achieved great personal success, there's value in it. Because what I've learned is that the conversations after I've had these conversations is the number of people that ring me or send me a text and say, Gaz, great conversation, but they can pull something out of the conversation that made a point for them. And I think, you know, that for me is it. If we touch one person today that helps them in their coaching journey, then I think it's been a great chat, as well as us catching up and having a good time, because that's the way as well.
No, spot on, and that was a big responsibility I felt on my shoulders, Gaz. You know, I didn't have an illustrious playing career by any stretch. I worked damn hard to get to the professional level. Ended up playing for my local club in the old NSL, which was before its time, really. Northern Spirit was more an A-League franchise than it was an NSL club. But, you know, when I went into coaching, I really thought, you know, I have to prove that you can get to the professional level as a coach in this country through the state league. And when I got there with the Ollie Roos, when I assisted Arnie, and we went to North Korea to get a point to qualify for Beijing. That was an incredible experience, but I knew I was sort of flying the flag at the time for state league coaches, saying it is possible to have a career in coaching through the semi-professional ranks into the professional ranks. And then obviously the Mariners opportunity came up, but the foundation for me, which I will never forget and always be grateful, was Manly Warringah Association and Manly United Football Club, because it was my junior club and association. They gave me the opportunity to go full time when there was really no such thing at the state league level, and they gave me an opportunity to really build something professional at a state league level, and I'm proud to see how they've gone from strength to strength since.
Mossy, you've had good success as a coach, as a head coach. You've also had good success as an assistant coach. Some people say, assistant coach is great because it's all care and no responsibility. And most of us don't know what we don't know until we get appointed as the head coach, because we think we know, but until we've actually got the job, we become a lot wiser immediately. Talk to us a little bit about that. How has your coaching changed and evolved over the time? And how do you make that switch from I'm here doing everything I can to help this group of players and help this head coach, as opposed to I'm doing everything I can to help this group of players and this team of staff that I have to help grow and develop if we're going to be successful?
Yeah, look, I think at the root of all of it, Gaz, is what I said in the beginning. What gets me out of bed in the morning is people and being the best I can be, and being a little bit better today than I was yesterday, or a little bit better next week than I was this week. To evolve my leadership and my skill set to help those around me reach their full potential, whatever that may be. And so it doesn't matter if you're working at Central Coast Mariners or Sydney FC or Jongbuk Motors in the K League. It's about people, and it's about setting that environment so everyone gets the opportunity. If they're driven enough and motivated enough, they get the opportunity to realise their full potential and make the most of what they've got. And I'll never forget the first day at the Mariners. We sat the players down, and Arnie basically said, my job and the staff's job is to create as many millionaires in this dressing room as we can. When you think about some of the names, the Matty Ryans, the Bernie Abinis, the Tommy Rogic's, the Trent Sainsbury's, the names roll off the tongue. It was a fantastic team meeting, and you could see the eyes light up of the players. And it's never been so much, you're certainly emotionally attached to the club that you're working for at the time, but the really strong why for me is people.
Yeah. Has your coaching changed over the journey?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I don't think you're ever, ready. You can never look at a job and go, I'm 100% ready for this. But you can certainly look back and go, I'd probably do things a little bit differently now to what I did then, because, I'm more experienced now. I've looked at things from a different light. I've learned from mistakes, which you can't make unless you make them. And you can't learn from them if you don't have an open mind. So I often think about whether I would go back into coaching one day. And the answer is never say never. And I've learnt that from experience. You never know what's around the corner. But what I do know is, if and when I do go back into coaching, I'm going to be a lot better equipped. I'm going to learn from the past. And I think, without putting the cart before the horse, if I did go back into coaching, whatever club I went to, it's going to sound silly, Gaz, but it'll be a very shrewd signing, because, I do feel there's still some unfinished business. But I've really consciously gone away from the game at a coaching level to better myself and really understand leadership at a much deeper level than what I ever did when I was in football. So who knows what's down the track? But the project with FCA was just too good an opportunity to step away from coaching and have a wider impact on the coaching profession across the game.
Yeah, mate. Arnie, you've spoken about the influence and impact Arnie's had on you as a player and also as a coach. You do work in the media, you're connected to people from other sports. Have coaches from outside of football influenced your coaching and your leadership?
Yes, definitely. I love studying, other coaches. I love listening to their press conferences. I love picking their brains when I get the opportunity. One of the first was probably Des Hasler. Obviously, the Manly Seagulls coach in rugby league now, but I knew Desi back when he was a player. And he really taught me how to get the best out of himself with very little around him. And Desi was famous as a player for being one of the fittest in the NRL. And it was all done, against most of his strength training was done against his own body weight. And he had a gym under his house at Coleroy Plateau. And I remember going there one day and saying, Desi, I want you to set me a program. And this when I was a young player. I was only in my early 20s at the time. And he said, you don't need all the fancy stuff to get the best out of yourself. You just need the right mindset and the right mentality and the hunger and the drive. And he had a bar, a chin-up bar attached to the ceiling under his house, and a few simple weights. And that was a really good lesson for me. And the other one was Gus Hiddink. I know he's in our game, but I had the pleasure of meeting Gus when he was in charge of the Socceroos, and I said, could you give me one gold nugget, Gus, for a young coach? And he said simply, he looked at me, he said, you got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and one mouth for a reason. And he just left it. He just let it hang, and I'm like, okay, I'll take that away. And obviously, over time, it's I knew what he meant at the time, but over time, it's really resonated with me.
Yeah. No, I think as a coach, you get used to standing up in front of people talking, and many of us like to hear the sound of our own voices. That's for sure. So, what great wisdom. I think I already know the answer to this, but why do you do it? Why do you coach?
Yeah, again, people. I love being around people. I love the game. There's a photo of myself before I could walk. I'm wearing a nappy, and there's a football in front of me that I keep close to me at home. And I do that because it always reminds me of my why. There's the photos of me sitting on the grass in the backyard as a kid in a nappy with a football in front of me, and the way I'm looking at the ball, it was quite clearly my first love in life, even before I knew it. So, I try and keep that close to me, that the reason we're involved in the game is because we love the game, and my real motivation is to be around people and to help get the best out of them and help them be the best that they can be.
Yeah. So that being the case, then what have been some of your most enjoyable moments as a coach?
Obviously, the wins stand out. The first title for the Mariners is right up there, of course, because smallest club that hadn't been able to, did that day against Western Sydney at the old SFS. But and obviously winning a title at Manly in the state league and getting promoted from the old state league, Super League to the Premier League. But really the things that stand out and that's not about me as a coach. It's not about me sitting there going, I've won something or anything like that. It's about seeing the looks on the faces of the players and their families and the fans, and being involved in something that's provided so much joy to so many people. That's what drives me. And I've always said, if you gave me the choice between lifting a trophy or driving a Matty Ryan to the airport so he could get on a flight and go and sign in the English Premier League, I'd take the trip to the airport any day, because you've played a small role in helping someone get to the next level, and I still watch the likes of Matty and Trent Sainsbury and all those kids from the Mariners that are now playing for the national team and overseas. Like, that is the biggest source of pride for me, and how many players from the state league went to the National League and the A League.
Yeah, all those millionaires playing for the Mariners, eh?
That's it. I'm still waiting for the gold watches to arrive.
Multi-millionaires in most of those cases as well. Bossy, how about what has been some of the valuable lessons that you've learned on your highs and on the lows on your journey?
Probably the most powerful lesson, Gaz, was when I got the sack from the Mariners, and I fell out with the owner, Mike Charlesworth, and just knew that there was only going to be one winner. And when it's so public, and your mobile phone battery runs out of battery by 9:30 in the morning when you're in the job, and then 3 days after you're out of it, you're lucky if you recharge your phone once a fortnight. And for many months after that happened, I was going through a court case, and as you said, I had my family, my lawyer, and my mobile phone. I had this mindset that defined me. That being that coach from the Mariners that got the sack defined me. And God bless her cotton soul, my fiance Penny slapped me around the head one day and said, "You got to wake up to yourself. This is not you. You're always so positive. Your mindset at the moment is the thing that's dragging you down." And it was a great light bulb moment for me, because it showed the power of having the right people around you. And how, because as a coach, so often when things are going well, you've got plenty of people blowing smoke. But when things are going badly, they'll put their arm around you and sometimes feed into the victim mentality that you feel, when you're in that situation. So to have people around me like Penny, like my family, my mum and dad, my brothers, and my close mates who were prepared to, give me the old uppercut and say, this doesn't define you. You are who you are as a person, and that was a real turning point for me, and something that I've really held close to me through all the tough times since, and really helped build resilience.
Oh, it's good, mate. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. What does success look like?
It's a great question. It's a hard one to define in words, because I think success is a feeling, more so than a bunch of words put together. But if I always feel, if I can leave a positive imprint on everyone that I'm involved with, if I can get them to walk away with either a nugget to grab onto, or a smile on their face, or something that stirs their thinking, that's going to help take them to the next level, that for me is probably a decent definition. Again, hard to put into words. It's a feeling I get, and the other thing is just to be the best I can be as a human being. It's not about trophies or medals or putting players on a plane to go overseas. It's being the best me for those closest to me, best father I can be for my kids, partner for Penny, and make mum and dad proud until they draw their last breath, and carry on the tradition that they've worked so hard within the family to create.
Good on you, mate. I love that. I'm sure they are very, very proud. We are, all of us coaches, very proud of our Prez.
Thank you,
all right, mate. We're almost done here. If you've got one piece of wisdom, you ask Gusidik this, and you can't use his. You can't use Ernie Merrick's either. Check the VAR's working. But if you've got one piece, if you've got one piece of wisdom for coaches, whether they're at the beginning, middle, or towards the end of their journey, just one piece of wisdom, what would that be?
I would have to say, embrace the tough times, and take a moment to enjoy the good times.
That's it. That's a very succinct and quick summary. Thanks, Phil Moss. Really, really appreciate your time today. You queried whether you were great enough, interesting enough to be a part of this conversation. And like all of the people that sit the other side of this camera, you've done a great job, mate. Really, really appreciate your time. Appreciate your leadership, your honesty, and really appreciate the job you're doing for Australia's football coaches. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Gaz, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the amazing work you're doing with this podcast, because it's just providing so much guidance and wisdom for all the coaches out there. No one has to pay a cent for it; they just got to buy you a coffee. But it really is a wonderful service that you're doing. So thanks for having me along today.
Cheers, mate. Our pleasure. We really enjoyed it. You've been listening to The Football Coaching Life, a podcast brought to you by Football Coaches Australia and Making Media, the podcast professionals. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, if you want to learn a little bit more about Football Coaches Australia, go to footballcoachesoz.org.au. You can purchase a membership, you can renew a membership, you can learn a little bit more about our organisation. Have a wonderful day.